Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Forbidden Land podcast. I am not missing, not anymore. There's big turmoil in the Trump administration right now. Big turmoil because I have breaking news that I read right before I hit record on this. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been fired as Attorney General. They're saying they're reassigning her to a different job in the administration. It's about as legitimate as the Shields of America, man. It sounds like from what we've been hearing that Trump is trying to fire every woman in the administration, which is insane. This also comes at a very interesting time where the Supreme Court is currently weighing in on birthright citizenship, a case that they shouldn't have even considered in the first place. But I guess they want to toy around with the idea of the president being able to sign away amendments at his own whim. But during the case, it's the first time a sitting U.S. president has sat in on a Supreme Court briefing. There were oral arguments, and it seems like it didn't go too well. And I believe Pam Bondi and Trump were actually pictured leaving the court. So I have a feeling it has something to do with how that went. The Supreme Court was grilling the Trump admin in the court. I actually have some audio, actual audio, not a joke. I have some actual audio from the briefing. I mean, here is one of Trump's lawyers arguing that that the people who wrote the 14th Amendment in the Reconstruction era could not have foreseen like the type of world we live in now. A quote from him. And so I want you to see this exchange between the Trump admin's lawyers and Chief Justice Roberts.
Thank you, counsel. You mentioned in your briefing and also this morning the problem of birth tourism. Do you have any information about how common that is or how significant a problem it is?
It's a great question. No one knows for sure. There's a March 9th letter from a number of members of Congress to DHS saying, do we have any information about this? The media reports indicate estimates could be over a million or 1.5 million from the People's Republic of China alone. The congressional report that we cite in our brief talks about certain hotspots like Russian elites coming to Miami through these birth tourism companies. And I mean, here's the fact about it that I think is striking. Media reported as early as 2015 that based on Chinese media reports, there are 500 birth tourism companies in the People's Republic of China whose business is to bring people here to give birth and return to that nation.
Having said all that, you do agree that that has no impact on the legal analysis before us?
I think
It's so funny. His whole argument, let's say Trump had written the executive order about the First Amendment, right? Let's say his executive order was like, we're getting rid of freedom of speech. And this lawyer was arguing, China has a program where they come to America and they say, fuck you, President Trump. And they throw up their middle finger and they start saying America's bad and it's horrible. And that's what they're sending them over here to do. And then they go back home. Did you imagine that being the defense for signing away the 14th Amendment? That's insane. That's the argument here, is that because there's this possible notion that China's sending a caravan of people here to give birth and anchor themselves to the country. One, that's insane. That's ridiculous. There's no way that's happening. But two, even if it was, it doesn't change the fact that the 14th Amendment protects that kind of activity. And you might say, like, let's say this stupid thing that he's talking about is real, right? If you want to get rid of it, pass a constitutional amendment undoing birthright citizenship. That is the process that you have to go through to get rid of an amendment. If you want to undo an amendment, you have to pass another one to undo it. When prohibition was an amendment on the books, we passed another amendment to void the previous one. To my knowledge, it's the only time in American history we've ever done that. So that's how you get rid of another amendment, is you amend the Constitution to get rid of that amendment. If they wanted to get rid of free speech, they'd have to go through the amendment process and pass another one that says that the First Amendment's null and void. You can't just sign an executive order that says that the 14th Amendment doesn't exist anymore. That's ridiculous.
I think it's, I'd quote what Justice Scalia said in his Hamdan dissent, where their interpretation has these implications that could not possibly have been approved by the 19th century framers of this amendment. I think that shows that they've made a mess. Their interpretation has made a mess of the provision.
Well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century.
You know what's funny? Is you can use this exact same argument about the Second Amendment, that the right to bear arms was understood to be, you can arm yourself with a musket, you can form a small militia, since there wasn't really much of a standing military at the time. And you can do that to defend yourself against a tyrannical government. And the way that amendment's been like warped and stretched and interpreted so many different ways since it was created. The framers never thought people were going to have AR-15s. The idea of like a bazooka was not in their head when they wrote that amendment. You know, a flamethrower wasn't really an idea that they considered at that time. And yet it's still covered under the Second Amendment. And it's covered because while the world is changing, the Constitution doesn't, unless you change it through the proper process. And that's the point that Roberts is actually making here.
No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, too, where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
It is, and as Justice Scalia said, I think in the case that
Why does it matter? There are just under 400 million people in the United States. I think it's about 350 million something, somewhere in that range. The mid 300 million range. That is such a small fraction of the 8 billion person population around the planet. Why would a country of 1 billion, China, who is seemingly starting to slowly lead the world in economics over the U.S., why would they care to send their citizens to the U.S. to have anchor babies and then go back to China? It's just this like weird thing. Oh, 8 billion people are a plane ride away from the U.S. And this is clearly not that serious of a problem. There's 300 plus million people in the U.S. Is that really an issue that we're having? That people are flooding into the country and having anchor babies? Is that really the argument we're making here?
Alito was referring to, you've got a constitutional provision that addresses certain evils and it should be extended to reasonably comparable evils. He said that about statutory interpretation. I think the same principle applies here, and I think we quote that in our brief.
Support journalism you trust.
Just a complete flub of an argument. I mean, he even ends up like conceding the argument with the Chief Justice. You know, the implication, I can't imagine that the Supreme Court will actually rule in favor of Trump. I don't want to imagine a world where that's the case on this one. You know, they did just recently rule 8-1 with Ketanji Brown Jackson being the lone dissenter. They just ruled 8-1 that conversion therapy cannot be outlawed the way it has been in Colorado. 8-1, citing a First Amendment issue, that it violates medical providers' First Amendment rights. You know, the SCOTUS just ruled that. So I'm really hoping that they're not going to rule like that on this case. Because think about the implications here. It's not the implication of like, oh, if they rule in favor of Trump, birthright citizenship is effectively dead via court precedent and will only return if the Supreme Court is replaced just enough to warrant a new court precedent, you know, where it's like obvious that the amendment will be held up. The real implications are, can the President of the United States simply sign away a key part of a constitutional amendment with an executive order? That's what I believe is the key issue at hand here. We are moments away from a dictatorship. Moments. I think we'll get a ruling 7-2. But we are moments away from a dictatorship, full stop. Because if that precedent is set, nothing is going to stop the president from doing away with term limits, changing up how succession works. He could change it where if something happens to him, it's not J.D. Vance that takes his place. He could name a successor. He could write an executive order that says, I get to name a successor if I die in office, and there's nothing you can do about it. He can do away with women's right to vote, all the voting rights, the ones that prevent discrimination based on race, poll taxes, voting rights for women, the voting age being 18. He could up the voting age or lower it. He could change how senators are elected. He could change it to where they're instead appointed by the White House. Because the way that senators are elected is determined by constitutional amendments. He could get away with freedom of speech. He could force you to quarter the military in your home. He could do away with needing a warrant for search and seizure. He could compel you to testify on trial where you can't use your right to remain silent because you don't have that right anymore. He could get rid of due process altogether and then sentence you to cruel and unusual punishment. He can undo all of this. He can make us a Christian theocracy. He could get rid of your gun rights. And he could even bring back slavery. If given the power to sign away constitutional amendments with the stroke of a Sharpie or of a marker or whatever he uses. So those are the consequences that we are possibly enduring if the Supreme Court rules in favor of Donald Trump. This is also the first time that a sitting U.S. president has attended, God, the whistle is terrible today, has attended a Supreme Court oral arguments or briefing or anything like that. The first time a sitting U.S. president has sat in on oral arguments at the Supreme Court. I think that's what led to Pam Bondi being sacked. And, you know, Kristi Noem's gone too now. She's in the Shields of America. Yeah, the Trump administration is slowly falling apart. We're starting to see the cracks. Speaking of Kristi Noem, it leaked that her husband is a crossdresser. I don't necessarily care. He's a crossdresser. He can be a crossdresser if he wants. Nothing wrong with that part. But it's the fact that they're conservatives, so it makes it a bit hypocritical. And the fact that she probably knew he was a crossdresser. And the fact that her openly secret, actual lover, Corey Lewandowski, probably leaked those photos. And the photos are like of her husband with like giant balloon boobs under his shirt. Like it's crazy. It's such a wild story. It's one of the weirdest stories I've seen this week. And I think Corey Lewandowski leaked those photos, but that's just my little personal theory. My theory is like that because it would mean that Kristi Noem can divorce her husband with like a public excuse, and her and Corey can get married, and then they can't testify against each other and stuff like that. So I love water. Let's slow it down. There was no Kings protests this past week. I think it was last Saturday. This is the largest turnout for a protest. 8 million people. And I believe that's nationwide. It's the largest demonstration in U.S. history. Now, I understand the point of those protests. I just wish everybody was aligned on the goals here. We are trying to oppose Trump ideologically, and we need everybody on board with all of that. You can't be pro-Israel and attend those No Kings protests. You know, you can't be pro-life. You can't be pro-fascist. You can't be all these different things, but especially the pro-Israel part. And that's one of like the biggest kind of separators in the liberal and leftist democratic parts of the party. You know, although Democrats are starting to come around, we need general consensus on that one, man. But I do like that people are getting out and demonstrating. We need that. There have been protests in my hometown as well. All right. Let's talk about the Department of Homeland Security. The government was shut down. I believe it passed the record for longest government shutdown in history. Again. Let me look that up. How long did that go on for? How long did it last? Whoa. 48 days, people. The longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Dude, Trump must love winning. Constantly breaking records. You know, he grabs the record for longest government shutdown in the first term. Grabs it again, beats it in November and December of his second term. Smashes it out of the park again. Still in the second term. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me. So, Democrats in the House are saying that Senate Democrats are saying that House Republicans caved as the deal moved forward to reopen DHS. Oh my God. It's actually up in the air right now if Trump will let them reopen the DHS. Because if you remember, he wants the SAVE Act to be passed. The SAVE Act being the bill that would require you to get a whole new voter ID, show all this proof of identification. You know. I mean, It's gross. It's the new poll tax, in my opinion. I've been considering the new poll tax for a while, because that's what I think it is. I think it's the new poll tax. You have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for an identification card that is not your driver's license, in which your driver's license already requires a birth certificate, proof of residency, all this different stuff. It still requires that. And it even has a little star for the real ID to show that it's not only a real driver's license, but that you're also a U.S. citizen. And apparently that's not enough. He wants you to have to go out, spend $200, waste a day that you could be using working. Like I just said, blow $200 of your hard-earned money to get a voter ID card and use that to vote. And women will struggle to be able to do that because their birth certificates might not match the name that they've chosen to go by in their marriage if they've changed their last name. It's the new poll tax. So I'm wondering if Trump will... Lord, I have this whole thing out of whack. I wonder if Trump will, actually reopen the DHS, especially with, the SAVE Act not being passed. Here is a Republican being grilled on CNN.
You were Ohio Secretary of State for 8 years. Would you agree with Senator Barrasso that you ran fair, safe, and secure elections?
Of course we did. We did it within the laws that were granted to me. I don't make the laws. I run the elections. We made it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
But still, if they were fair,
the voter rolls, did all
fair,
those things.
safe, and secure, and at the time when you were Secretary of State, you could use a utility bill or a bank statement or a government check as an acceptable form of ID at the polls on Election Day. So when you were Secretary of State, that's what was acceptable to vote. So why is that not acceptable now?
Boom. Why is there no voter fraud in your state? Yet they're voting with no voter ID. Why is that okay there? But nationwide, it's a big problem. What's up with that? It's a valid question. And it really does poke holes in their logic here, where they're like, oh, we have this rampant, widespread voter fraud. We need you to get voter IDs so we can make sure our elections are secure. And no more mail-in voting and all this stuff. And meanwhile, all these red states have been using these systems with great success, like the rest of the country. So what's up with that?
That's what the law was when I was Secretary of State. The law can be improved.
No, sure, that's fine. But they were safe, fair, and secure. You say they were fair, safe, and secure. You agree with Senator Barrasso, and yet utility bill, bank statement, or government check, no real ID. And furthermore, that real ID that's used in Ohio under the new law actually.
I can explain to you how it actually worked. I had to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to get the authority to maintain the voter rolls. Because why? Because many states don't maintain the voter rolls properly. They have people on the voter rolls who are not legally allowed to vote in this country. And so if they're not going to maintain the voter rolls, then...
That's just not true. That is just not true. The amount of voter fraud that has occurred in 40 years is like a fraction of a percentage. And I'm being generous when I say that. It is like 9 zeros type of fraction. Like 8 or 9 zeros after the decimal and then like a 1. The drop in the bucket. Inconsequential level of voters casting ballots fraudulently.
At the point of voting, we need to know who's actually voting, and a photo ID is the best, safe, and fairest way to do that.
So why is a driver's license not good enough? I have been arguing this about voter ID laws for a long time now. Make the voter ID free. It shouldn't cost money. We pay taxes. It should be free. Why we pay taxes and then have to pay for shit from the government that we're paying taxes to, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. But make the voter IDs free then. Issue them out. It's the same logic I have about why we have to file our taxes every season with a third party and why the IRS can't just send us the bill. Why we can't just send the IRS our info and they send us the bill. They know how much I made last year. They know how much I've paid in taxes. Same thing with this. Make voter IDs free, and it's no longer a problem. It's not an issue if voter IDs don't cost money, and they don't require you to go stand in long-ass lines at some government agency that's underfunded and understaffed, making you wait in these long-ass lines just to get your ID card.
80% of the American people support that. That is the best way to run an election. And Democrats said they didn't oppose that. I offered an amendment to give them a chance to do that, and they still said no.
No, I hear you on that. But just to be clear, when you were Ohio Secretary of State and you could vote using a utility bill, bank statement, or government check, that was a fair, safe, and secure election. That's just what you said.
And we had fraud during that time under those provisions, okay? I did audits that showed that there were people on the voter rolls who tried to vote.
You didn't have very much, considering that they're talking about some of these Save America.
I guess you're arguing that a little bit of crime is okay, but even if we can fix it so that there's no crime.
No, that's not what I'm arguing at all. I understand that's what you wanted to say. That's not what I'm saying.
You're telling me that the fraud is inconsequential. So that must mean that you want more fraud. Holy shit. Holy shit. What a leap of logic. Oh, because there's a little bit of crime. You don't even believe that. Every time we've brought up gun laws in this country, y'all make the exact opposite argument. Like, oh, well, gun laws won't eliminate every single gun death in the country. That's not what laws are for. They're there to prevent it from being too much. People still speed, but if there are no speed limits, everybody would speed. A lot more people would be murdering if there weren't murder laws. That doesn't mean murder doesn't exist anymore. It sure does. But the SAVE Act here does more harm than it does good. It doesn't prevent fraud. All it does is make it harder to vote. There isn't enough consequential voter fraud in this country to even pass something like this. That is beyond overkill. It's predatory on the poor, and it's a new poll tax on poor people. It's pointless. It makes no sense to require people to take a day off work, go stand in a long-ass line at the government building, show all this proof of identification, get a voter ID card, and pay $200 to get it. That makes no sense. It actually does make sense if you know that their whole goal here is to simply stop you from voting. That's their whole goal here.
Possible, as secure as possible.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there were 29 cases of election fraud in Ohio. You could say 30 if you included the extra one. There was one more that was closed.
There were many more cases of that.
There was these were.
I love making shit up. No. Don't read the facts to me. No, stop. No, stop. Don't read the facts to me. That's not true. No, that's not true. Don't read the real statistics. I saw so much voter fraud. I just didn't tell anybody. As Secretary of State, I just didn't tell anyone.
The one Heritage Foundation. This was the actual one that were.
That's the best part. Is that the voter fraud statistics we have about voter fraud in this country come from the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is behind like the entire conservative project of the 21st century. You know, they're the ones behind all the conservative justices right now. Even their own voter fraud numbers prove our point that it's inconsequential and that a SAVE Act, voter ID laws on a national scale would be detrimental to voting rights in this country. It would disenfranchise millions of people. But that's their goal. That's the conservatives' goal. They're so arrogant that their own think tank can release numbers proving them wrong, and they'll still pass a voter ID law that kneecaps millions of people's rights to vote. It's not that it necessarily gets rid of the right to vote. I mean, it kind of does, but it's more of getting rid of the accessibility to vote, which in itself is getting rid of your right to vote. If you can't make it to the poll, or you can't even get the ID required to vote, that is disenfranchisement. If you can't afford it, that's a poll tax. You're paying a $200 poll tax to go vote. That's what you're doing. That's what this law wants you to do. Next, we're going to have SAVE Act 2, where they're going to force you to take a test before you go and vote. I mean, what other Jim Crow era bullshit are we going to pull out? This is crazy. They're like, oh, there's a lot more voter fraud. I've seen it as a secretary. So there's a lot more voter fraud. I just didn't report it. And then his own think tank that backs his party is saying that there is not enough voter fraud to be consequential. Think about it. Like, imagine like, oh, there's a small anthill in my front yard, so I'm going to spray mustard gas all over my whole neighborhood to kill the one anthill. Sorry, not neighborhood. I'm going to cover my whole city in mustard gas to kill this one anthill. And this is the town where there's only one anthill in the whole town, and it's in my fucking yard. That's the solution here. There's like a small water droplet of voter fraud in the whole ocean of voting over the last 40 years. And they want to throw the world's largest sponge on top of it. That's what they're doing here.
I did my own audit. I know what.
I did my own audit? Brother! Your own think tank did its own fucking audit and is proving you wrong. Oh my God. I did my own research. Oh my God, man. Don't believe the publicly accessible data that that has been signed off on by like every major political organization, anyone that does statistics. It's like a reliable study that shows very reliable statistics about what a non-issue voter fraud is in this country. Don't believe any of that publicly available information, and believe my little homework side project that I did while I was Secretary of State. Oh my God, what kind of bullshit fumes are these Republicans huffing into your mouth, man?
It happened in Ohio. I was in charge of elections. I can tell you
Oh my
exactly what
God.
happened. There
I
were
have your
numerous
numbers.
Cases every election cycle.
I have your numbers, but I'm
There
talking
were
about the
over
ones that went through.
144 cases.
I'm talking about the ones that went through the full process. One single conviction from a case.
Yeah, one guy who was Secretary of State for one period of time in Ohio's whole history did his own little bullshit study on voter fraud because he was looking for something. He was looking for the voter fraud. He made up some numbers about it, not realizing that this Heritage Foundation thing expands and covers like multiple decades of voting history. Nationwide, too.
Started while you were Secretary of State afterward that you could add to that 29. From a case started while you were Secretary.
Cases.
I'm talking about the ones that went through the full process. One single conviction from a case started while you were Secretary of State afterward that you could add to that 29.
Wow. One. Keep in mind, one of the most high-profile cases of voter fraud in recent American history is in the 2020 election, Donald Trump allegedly, along with several co-conspirators, allegedly, which includes the current lieutenant governor of Georgia, allegedly, and multiple Coffee County officials, election officials, allegedly installed fake electorates to try to rig Georgia in favor of Trump and not Joe Biden. That is the most recent, most infamous case of voter fraud in American history, the most recent one that I can think of. So if we want to look at voter fraud, it's not that the voters were committing fraud, it's that the candidate was allegedly committing fraud. In my home state, it was attempted. They were charged. Granted, Fonnie Willis fucked it up, but they were charged. That it was the Republicans who allegedly tried to commit voter fraud, man. So insane. It makes me so annoyed when these fuckers are like, oh, look at all this voter fraud that we found in the magic magician's hat. Good Lord, man. Oh, man. Anyway, let's talk about a lighter topic. The war in Iran. Oh, my God. Talk about the war in Iran. So the war is a month in now. We hit a month on March 28th. And it seems that the Democrats have kind of done nothing. It's kind of crazy how the Democrats are just sitting on their hands waiting for Trump to do something. They're like, oh, we're going to catch him fucking up. It's like, or you could like use your legislative power to put a stop to this war instead of waiting to see how many more people Donald Trump will murder in the Middle East before he decides this war is too costly and I'm going to lose every election for the next 30 years if I don't pull out right now. You know, so one of the biggest voices on the Democratic side, Chuck Schumer, the Senate minority leader, or in his words, the majority leader, because he's insane. His issue with the Iran war isn't that we are illegally invading a sovereign nation for no reason other than the fact that Israel asked us to, and that we want their oil, and that we view them as a legitimate threat because they overthrew our Shah in 1979 after we overthrew their democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh. You know, it isn't that's why we did this war, and that it's unjustifiable, and that we've murdered children and dropped bombs on civilian areas and are blowing through billions of dollars a day and are trying to allocate even more money to the war now, even though we're saying that we've won it, we're going to pull out, but now we're also going to ground invade Karg Island, which is going to get way more Americans killed than have been killed so far. That's not Chuck Schumer's issue with the war. His issue with the war is that Trump didn't go through the proper channels. See, in Chuck Schumer's world, I don't know what's going on with my hair like right here, but it's really annoying. In Chuck Schumer's world, if Trump had simply come to Congress and said, hey, Congress, can I invade Iran? You know, if he had just done it the proper way like George Bush did it with the Iraq War, where they did the song and dance of, oh, there's WMDs in Iraq, Saddam Hussein is evil, I totally don't hate Saddam Hussein because he embarrassed my daddy. I actually hate him because he has big, scary nukes and large-powered weapons. And then sent Colin Powell to the UN, and then did all this work to convince people to do this illegal invasion of Iraq. Instead of going, if he had just gone through all that, come to Congress gone, hey guys, can I destroy Iran? They might be building a nuke again. And like, Israel asked us to. Then Chuck Schumer would be all on board with it. His issue is simply a paperwork violation. And here is what a candidate for the Maine Senate Democratic primary had to say about it. Graham Plattner, who has been killing it lately, by the way, on the issue of Israel. You know, calling it a genocide and actually sticking to his guns and his morals.
You need to stop having a problem with the illegal wars we have been starting simply because of the paperwork that wasn't done properly. You should be against them because they are fundamentally...
I forgot he said it the exact same way. Damn, I totally forgot about that.
Moral, unethical, and illegal. And that is what, and we should have absolutely no discussion about funding them, because wars that are killing people for the benefit of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, those wars should not be waged, period, end of story. I don't care if we went through the proper channels. I don't care if the right boxes got checked. What I care about is they should never happen in the first place, and we should be wielding the power of Congress with the power of the purse to not pay for this garbage, because somebody has to actually stand up and do something. And it is that, I think, right now is the most effective method. Don't pay for this stuff. And instead, we're watching a lot of establishment Democrats be like, lament the war.
Because of procedural issues. You didn't ask us first. Instead
That's
of this
right.
is fucked up.
And then now be like, well, maybe we still have to pay for it. I'm like, but you don't. You need...
Exactly. They always complain. They always bemoan the whole, oh, well, you know, if they had just asked us nicely, we would have said yes. They always say all this shit. And then at the very end of the day, they still say yes on that funding bill. They're still going to say yes on funding all of this. Like how we just gave up the government shutdown back in December. It's just like that. We always roll over and go, yeah, I guess you guys can do whatever you want. Whatever. I wish we had more candidates like Graham Plattner across the country. I really do. I wish that... I wish that we had more I wish that the Democratic Party would have an internal leadership coup where competent, progressive, left-leaning, even left-leaning liberals took the reins of the Democratic Party leadership, got rid of corporate interest money, and actually fought against the Republicans as a real opposition by putting up candidates that will replace incumbents and replace establishment candidates and come into the Senate and the House and actually make a damn difference. I really wish that we would actually start doing that in the Democratic Party. Graham Plattner's a great example of this, that, you know, and Kat Abu-Ghazali was a great example of this, and Pam Bondi's a great example of this as the mayor of New York City, and DSA's doing a great job with that. It needs to change where we can't just keep passively voicing opposition. I say we like I'm a Democrat. The Democrats can't keep passively voicing opposition to the Trump administration and then do nothing about it when it comes to actually doing something. We need more actual opposition figures in the Democratic Party, like Graham Plattner. If every candidate was like Graham Plattner in the way that they speak and the way that they message, in just a very real, honest, down-to-earth way that, you know, me and you would think more than likely. If all the Democratic candidates were like this, we would see a supermajority in the Senate and House that we haven't seen even since... What's all that noise? Even since before Obama. I just heard like a really loud rumble. It was really freaky. Yeah, we would see blue wave numbers that haven't been seen before. What am I hearing? I keep hearing like rumbles. There's no rain. I don't understand what's going on. No thunderstorm. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Anyway, let's continue. Israel has now murdered a journalist in Lebanon. Here is him confronting IDF soldiers. I guess it is thunder. Here's him confronting IDF soldiers. And he was murdered by Israel in a targeted assassination. And Israel then tries to claim that he's a terrorist. I mean, you can even see guys in the replies calling him a terrorist and saying that, you know, he deserved to die because he was a terrorist. He was just a journalist from Lebanon. His crime? Being Lebanese. And, even worse, a journalist. Being Lebanese is one thing. They'll still kill you if you're Lebanese. But being a journalist, it doesn't matter what you are. If you're a journalist, you're fair game to Israel. Because Israel's biggest enemy is the world seeing just how evil they are. That's their biggest weakness and their biggest enemy, is the truth and reality. People seeing just how disgusting and evil Israel actually is. And I say all this because then they go on Fox fucking News and start being like, look, here's a picture of him where we photoshopped him as a member of Hezbollah.
Were killed, including Ali Shuaib, who worked for the Hezbollah-affiliated Al Manor television network. The IDF accused Shuaib of operating as a member of Hezbollah's...
Look at that. They photoshopped him to look like he's a member of Hezbollah. Which, keep in mind, Hezbollah, while considered terrorists by Israel, are basically just the military arm of Lebanon. And they're only considered terrorists because Israel wants Lebanon. And so they call them terrorists to justify murdering everybody in southern Lebanon, of which they are occupying right now, by the way. They are now holding an occupation in southern Lebanon. The Iran war gave them just enough cover and distracted just enough people so that they could get away with occupying southern Lebanon.
Radwan forces and included a photo of him wearing a military uniform. When asked by Fox News about the source of the photo, the IDF responded, quote, "Unfortunately, there isn't really a picture of it. It was photoshopped."
What the fuck? What? They couldn't even lie? Unfortunately, they just admitted it. There isn't really a picture of it. It was photoshopped. Brother, come on. How do people not see the reality in front of their face? Oh, we couldn't find any actual evidence that this guy was part of Hezbollah and was a militant. We couldn't find any evidence of that. And so we photoshopped a picture of him as a Hezbollah soldier. That's crazy. And then to admit it. Fox News is like, hey, where'd you get this photo from? Can we get a source on the photo of him as a Hezbollah soldier? Well, sadly, you know, we can't give you that because, well, we photoshopped it. What the fuck? Yeah. Israel has also gotten into a lot of controversy by closing the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Sepulchre, sorry. Jesus, that word is so hard to say. They closed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre on Palm Sunday, which is the first time that's happened in centuries, citing national security matters. It's not the first time they've closed a holy site for no reason other than just to be cruel. They also closed Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan. They do this all the time, but not to this level. I think this is like the first time in a long time that they've prodded the Christians the way that they have. And people are thinking that this is in retaliation to the Pope speaking out against the Iran war.
Talking about Pope Leo issues a strong rebuke of an atrocious Iran war in Palm Sunday. His message saying, quote, hands are full of blood. And this comes just a day after Pope Leo on social media also had this message to people ahead of Palm Sunday, saying the wars that stain the present moment with blood are the fruit of those in power and money. Let us not grow accustomed to the clamor of weapons and images of war. Peace is not merely a balance of power. It is the work of purifying.
Why did he not quote that correctly? He said of those of power and money. The Pope said the fruit of the idolatry of power and money. He's saying that people are idolizing these people due to their power and money. And that these people who are warmongering idolize power and money.
Hearts of those who see others as brothers and sisters to be protected, not enemies to be defeated. And some of these are images we are seeing there, as Pope Leo said on Sunday at this prayer at St. Peter's Square during this Palm Sunday, with the U.S. and Israeli war on Iran entering its second month and Russia's ongoing campaign in Ukraine. Leo.
That really is crazy that the Pope spoke out against the Iran war. I can see now why they chose an American Pope. I can see it. I kind of knew back then why, but I can really see it now. Apparently also Israeli police blocked a Catholic cardinal from the Church of Holy Sepulchre as well on Palm Sunday. It's a good job, Christians. Here is a large U.S. Air Force plane. For the first time in the modern history of American warfare, one of them's been destroyed. By who, you may ask? Iran. We are completely fucking throwing this war. I mean, the fact that we're even considering ground invasion right now. Trump is considering ground invasion, and Israel won't even join us. The fact that we're even considering this kind of shows that we're kind of getting our asses beat. In response to all this, we apparently dropped bunker buster bombs on Iran.
Get to Trey Yingst. He's live in Tel Aviv. What's the mood and the view from there?
Target an Iranian ammunition depot. The president releasing some of the video on Truth Social showing significant damage and destruction outside the city of Isfahan. While President Trump is still offering Iran a chance at a diplomatic solution, the U.S. and Israel are ramping up pressure on the Islamic Republic.
The video the president posted last night of Isfahan, an ammo depot struck by U.S. bombers. You see, you don't get to.
Have you noticed how every department has had their go at it? Have you noticed that? So far, Kristi Noem's been fired. This comes off the back of the ICE debacle in January and the whole testifying before Congress where she basically threw Trump under the bus, or not really under the bus, threw him out into oncoming traffic during questioning about if she had approval from the president to grant her shell company a buttload of ad money contracts with the Department of Homeland Security. She got fired after that. Pam Bondi had the entire debacle with the Epstein files, went and testified before Congress, completely embarrassed herself, made the administration look bad. She's now been fired. Is Pete Hegseth next? They've been kind of signaling for a little bit now that Pete might be next. Even Laura Ingraham kind of took a couple shots at him recently. But it seems like with the entire fuck up of the Iran war and how Pete just can't shut his fucking mouth in public and is constantly just spewing garbage about the war, and basically the Trump admin is at historic lows right now with approval ratings. They have one of the lowest approval ratings in U.S. history. He is fucking up so bad. Pete Hegseth might be next. Pete might be the next secretary to go. They just replaced Christy Nome with Mark Wayne Mullen. What? Got served something on a silver platter. Wow, that's great. It seems that Matt Gaetz might be a potential replacement for Pam Bondi. I mean, he was the original consideration for the job. He might be in consideration, but is Pete Hegseth next? Or was Matt Gaetz the original Secretary of Defense pick? Or was he the original Attorney General pick? I think he was the original AG pick. I think Pete Hegseth was always the Defense Secretary pick. I don't remember now. It's been so long. So much has happened. So much of this country has fallen apart and been destroyed since then. I just don't remember. But Pete Hegseth might be next. Before I get to this article I just came upon, let's watch this clip. So Trump went on Truth Social and encouraged his
troops on the
supporters.
ground. He said no troops on the ground.
Pause it. The Twitter player is completely busted, man. So he went on Truth Social and said, "Watch Mark Levin tonight at 8 p.m. on Fox News." The reason for this is because Mark Levin is arguing for a ground invasion in Iran.
He said no troops on the ground. I don't remember that in any campaign speech either. But why would we need troops on the ground? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we wouldn't need 300,000 of them. It's this uranium, too. We've got to get the uranium. If it cannot be destroyed, if it cannot be altered, we got to get it. For the reason I just said. You can make dirty bombs.
This is so...
over time, you can still make sophisticated missiles.
This is so hypocritical. So why is Israel allowed to have nukes? Now, first of all, the Ayatollah Khomeini was against having a nuclear bomb. It's literally against their interpretation of Islam. It is a mortal sin in Islam to have something that can just murder untold amounts of innocent people. So that's the first thing. But Khomeini was explicitly against having nukes. Would it have been smart for Iran to have a nuke? Of course, because then they wouldn't be invaded right now. But it's pretty clear that he didn't want one, that they were basically enriching this uranium for energy consumption. And any talks of nukes or anything like that have simply been Israeli and State Department propaganda. But yeah, he's using the threat of uranium in Iran as a convincing argument for ground troops. And it's not working, by the way. People don't want this war. I've done the bus driver test to everyone I know that I work with, everyday normal people. All of them hate this war. And the ones that like it, the few that like it, have no idea what's going on. They don't know. They have no clue why they like it or why it could possibly be a bad thing to even be in this war. They're clueless. They're just listening to the government full-heartedly with zero critical thinking involved. This war is deeply unpopular. This war is as unpopular as the Iraq War was after year 2 of that war. And we're only a month in. And now they want $200 billion to continue the war. There's an article that goes into the final meeting between Pam Bondi and Donald Trump. Reports are beginning to emerge that the president intends to fire the National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard over an embarrassing social media blunder that he feels undermines the administration's military operation in Iran. Holy shit, man. Yeah, that's right. Get these broads out of here. That's what Trump is saying. Hey, get these broads out of my sight, huh? Send them to the Shields of America, huh? Get these broads out of my office. Because that's the thing, Bondi wasn't even like fully fired. They said that they were going to reassign her to a different part of the administration, like Kristi Noem. So are they just going to send her to the Shields of Americas and like rename it to something else? Like, hey, the Shields of Broads, huh? The Shields of Women, huh? Get these broads out of my White House. Hey, get these women out of my sight. So damn, maybe Tulsi Gabbard will be the next one to go, and it won't be Pete Hegseth just yet. Apparently, reports were emerging that Trump was having private discussions about firing Bondi over her handling of the Epstein files. He took to Truth Social to announce that she will be transitioning into the private sector in a similar manner to his firing of former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Huh. Oh, he called her a great American patriot and a loyal friend. Wow. Todd Blanche is now the current acting attorney general until they find a new one. He's floating the idea of appointing EPA head Lee Zeldin to replace Pam Bondi, according to the New York Times. He previously called Zeldin a, quote, secret weapon who is getting, quote, those approvals for the EPA, quote, done in record-setting time. Do you really have to do 3 different quotes in there? Wow. Apparently they had a standoff that ultimately culminated in her firing the evening before. Senior officials claimed that Bondi was, quote, unhappy and tried to change his mind, end quote, after revealing his decision, but he did not budge. Yeah, good luck. Good luck trying to convince Trump of anything. She allegedly asked him to extend the amount of time she could serve in the role, though the proposal did not change his mind. This comes after Robert Garcia of California, a ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, declared that Bondi will still be obligated to testify before the committee about the Epstein files, despite being axed from her post in an Twitter post, immediately after the firing was announced. Awesome. So she's lost her job and she still has to testify before Congress. That is just so funny. Lost her job and she still might be liable for the Epstein file fuck up. They allegedly got into a heated verbal altercation last week. Damn. I was going to say, yesterday, I guess the day that he fired her that night. But yesterday, in the morning, yeah, they were both at the Supreme Court together. Huh. I don't know if it issued its ruling. The article is claiming it issued its ruling. It didn't issue a ruling. Did it? I didn't see anything about a ruling. I don't know what this article is talking about. Yeah, they haven't issued a ruling yet. That's an error in the article, clearly. They're casting doubt on the Trump administration's arguments. And they're probably leaning towards not ruling in his favor, but they haven't issued a ruling. This guy wrote the wrong thing in the article. Hey, Phelan Stempler. Holy shit, what a name. Change that part of your article. They have not issued a ruling on that case yet. Another part of the government that might get sacked soon is the FBI director, Kash Patel, because after all this, Iranian hackers have hacked his Gmail account, man. They've got the photos. This is just a few of them. These are him smoking cigars, apparently in Havana, Cuba. Brother, this is nuts. Especially while all the Cuba stuff is going on right now. Bro, he's probably going to be next. They got hella photos of him, man. How much shit did he have on his Google account? Damn. Back before he looked like he was traumatized to death. So yeah, the Iran war is going great. Gas prices are higher than they were at the peak of 2023, even the peak of 2022. I'm pretty sure they're higher than they ever were under Biden now. So I can't wait to see the I did that stickers on every gas pump of Donald Trump pointing at the price. That'll totally happen, guys. There totally aren't double standards here where Biden simply existing in office somehow caused gas prices to go up, but Trump actively bombing the place that a lot of our oil that a lot of the world's oil comes from somehow doesn't affect gas prices. Sure. Whatever, man. Speaking of oil, during the Cuban blackouts that have been going on during the last month or so, and honestly, let's be real, throughout a lot of Cuba's lifetime, the rolling blackouts could be temporarily, solved for the time being. Because the U.S. allowed a Russian oil tanker into the region. What is the play here? Like, genuinely, what is the president's play here? I'm glad that Cuba got oil so they could power their country. This ends the blackouts. They can actually have energy in their country right now. The U.S. embargo on Cuba, insanely fucked up. But the U.S. has expressed interest in taking the country. How is allowing Russian oil into Cuba I just don't get why the president decided to do this. It's so weird. It's so out of character for this administration. But I guess it's just another move that shows that Donald Trump has Russia's interests in mind. But I am glad that the Cubans are getting their oil. Although it is quite damaging to the Ukrainian cause for it to be Russian oil, when it could just be, if we were a moral nation, a nation of morals and human rights and genuine empathy for the rest of the world and parts of the world that we've ravaged and destroyed. If we were a real country, maybe we would just give them oil ourselves. Not put an embargo on them. Actually allow them to function as a country. But no, as Donald Trump said at the Saudi financial investors meeting in Miami, Cuba's next.
Because I campaigned on the fact peace through strength, you wouldn't have to use it. I said you'll never have to use it, but sometimes use it. And Cuba's next, by the way, but pretend I didn't say that, please. Pretend I didn't say that. Please, 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 media, please disregard that statement. Thank you very much. Cuba's next. Because I campaigned on the fact.
So are we going to take Cuba? I don't understand. Or are we going to go in and bomb them? Is Cuba is April the month that we go after Cuba? Because every month now we've either threatened to or invaded a country. January it was Venezuela. February it was Greenland. March it's Iran. Technically the end of February, but you get my point. March it's mainly Iran. Is April going to be Cuba? What's next month? Do we have a country lined up for next month? I was going to do the cabinet blow off, but it's old news at this point. one of them is like RFK throwing his whole family under the bus and blowing the president, but it's not a big deal. I instead want to talk about something far more important, which is blatant and open corruption of the Trump administration. The Trump admin went to a renewable energy company that creates wind farms. Wind, a renewable resource that will always be here on Earth as long as there's an atmosphere that still blows wind around the planet. Is, a renewable resource similar to solar, not something like oil or even nuclear, because even though nuclear is clean energy, it's not renewable. It is a good option, but it's a temporary option. Wind, solar, good forms of renewable energy that releases your reliance on oil. And there was like a $1 billion project to create wind farms from this company, this French, or was it a French company? This wind farm company was going to create like $1 billion of wind farms. And the Trump admin took that contract, went to that company and said, here's $1 billion, cancel the project. We bought them out of the project. Just blatant, open corruption. There is no way that the White House had any right, that specifically the Justice Department had any right to give $1 billion of our taxpayer money to Total Energies, a French company, it is a French company, to Total Energies to cancel their wind farm project. This company would forfeit its leases in federal waters that would have been used for 2 wind farms that would have been built off the coast of New York and North Carolina. New York, North Carolina. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I didn't say North York or whatever the fuck. These wind farms wouldn't have even been on land, but Trump always opens his big, stupid moron mouth and is constantly like, folks, think of the birds. These wind farms, they kill a lot of birds. That's right. Folks, have we even considered that these wind farms are really damaging to birds? Oil destroys the planet, erodes the atmosphere, the process of getting your hands on oil. Destroys the atmosphere, ruins the planet. Burning the oil destroys the atmosphere and ruins the planet. It poisons the oceans and kills sea life. It poisons us. It poisons crops, poisons water supplies. But wind farms might hit a bird every now and then. Shut the fuck up. All of this is just so oil companies can continue to make a profit while using the federal government as its large hammer to get whatever it wants. And these guys will do it because they're getting paid to do it. Absolutely ridiculous and blatant corruption. This administration has been nothing but blatant, open corruption everywhere. Blatant open corruption. It is so disgusting how this administration has taken the Constitution and just completely fucked it into something unrecognizable. It might as well just be a piece of toilet paper at this point to wipe your ass with, because that's what Trump uses it for. That's why it's in his office. Or actually, I think the Declaration of Independence is in his office. Same fucking thing at this point. He uses all of our founding documents to wipe his ass. He doesn't give a fuck about this country. He only is president to profit off of our citizens, profit off our tax dollars, use our government to manipulate markets to make him profit, make his family make a fortune, to create a dynasty, because he was denied it his whole life by New York elites, by people who thought he was disgusting. He was denied it because he's a dime store billionaire. He's a great value, off-brand businessman who has failed at every corner of his life. He can't even competently run a corrupt administration. He has failed successfully in the right direction for himself. His administration is so incompetent, so stupid, They can't even do corruption correctly. They do it in the open. They fuck it up constantly. And you know what they do in response? They go, oh, well, we did it. And what are you going to fucking do about it? And he's right. He's right. What are we going to do about it? Congress does nothing. He controls both chambers of the Congress. They do nothing in response. There are no checks and balances. The Supreme Court has even ruled against him. They've done more than Congress has. They've ruled against him in cases. They've told him to bring back people that they've rounded up and put in deportation camps. They've told him to do multiple things. Multiple courts have issued court orders against him, and he ignores them every step of the way. And even if Congress passed the War Powers Act, even if they passed a War Powers resolution to stop the war in Iran, he wouldn't abide by it because he didn't care about getting permission in the first place, and he's not going to abide by a congressional order to stop it. This administration is disgustingly corrupt. And the Democrats' response in 2028? Nothing. It will be nothing. Anyway, if you want to support this show, if you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/forbiddenlandpod.
The federal judge.
Let me actually end it on a good note. I totally forgot about this part because I got on my soapbox. But a federal judge has blocked the order that prevents NPR and PBS from getting funding. Basically meaning that NPR and PBS, although a few months too late, can still get their funding, and that the funding order that was issued will not go into effect anymore.
The federal judge has blocked President Trump's order targeting funding for NPR and PBS. The judge says the administration cannot punish news outlets over coverage it dislikes, calling the action unconstitutional. It hits especially close to home here in the D.C. area since NPR is based in D.C. and PBS is headquartered in Arlington. We should point out an appeal is likely. We'll keep tracking.
Yeah, it's like the one piece of decent news, and it's not even that like great, you know. It's still like not that promising because they're probably just gonna appeal it. I think I blew out my voice doing that. That's crazy. That's what it took to get me to destroy my voice, is to yell about this. But we'll see next week if birthright citizenship is still intact, or if just the simple fact of the president not being able to strike down constitutional amendments with executive orders will still be intact. Next week, we'll know if we've done a ground invasion of Iran, although I said that last week, so I don't know. Trump will probably continue to get cold feet on this topic. Or he'll invade Carg Island tonight, like or tomorrow night, like he's been doing every time I release an episode of this podcast, where I release the episode in the morning, and then he does some consequential, insane shit the following night. So, we'll see. Support this podcast at patreon.com/forbiddenlandpod. It's cheap. You can get bonus content, or you can pay for the even cheaper tier if you just want to send me a couple bucks for like the vending machine at work, I guess. They'll cover at least one soda a month if one of you subscribes. If like 5 of you subscribe at the lowest tier, that's like $15. And you can pay for my lunch at least once a month, which would be kind of cool. It'd be kind of nice. Thanks if you do that. But if you get bonus content and 5 of you subscribe, that's $30 a month. And then like I can afford my gym membership. That'd be kind of nice. Thank you if you do that. You can listen to this podcast audio only on any podcasting platform that you may be using, and if it's not on there, you can copy the RSS feed and put it on there if your app has that ability. I would be shocked to find a platform that doesn't have this podcast, because I've selected all of them. Minus like maybe 1 or 2 that like iHeartRadio. I don't think you can get this on iHeartRadio. Sorry, iHeartRadio fans. Although you wouldn't even hear this because you can't hear me if you're on iHeartRadio. All right. Or if you have a Samsung fridge, you could probably pull me up on there while you cook dinner. Or are just chilling in the kitchen at like 3 a.m. getting a glass of warm milk. You can't sleep. You can listen to my nice, soothing voice while I yell about democratic inaction in the federal government. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, see you next Friday. I'm going to try to continue my Georgia elections series. I took a little break from it because the war in Iran was very time-consuming for me to research. And now that things seem to be dying down a bit in terms of how much shit I have to cover every week regarding it, I might have time to do another episode, probably the joint episode of Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General elections. And then the other one I'm going to do is ballot initiatives. But that one I'm trying to let cook a little longer because there's only one, and the other 4 are proposed and just sitting in limbo in the Georgia State Legislature the last I looked. So that one might come a little later, closer to like the end of summer or something. So look out for that. I have another episode planned where I react to a Mr. Beat video. I have another idea where I make a new tier list. I won't say what it is. So look out for those. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.